Hi there, smart drivers. Talking to you tonight about traffic signs. Traffic signs are to driving what instructions are to an IKEA cabinet. Only when things go wrong do we actually look at the traffic signs. Become a safer, smarter driver by taking in the information and using it to be a responsive driver on the roadways. Talking about traffic signs, reading road signs. And this road sign on the opening slide here is a cautionary sign telling you that the road is curvy and maximum speed limit is 15 miles an hour. Now, if the road speed is 15 miles an hour, which is approximately 22, 23 kilometers an hour, you know that the road is really, really curvy and that you should definitely slow down for that curve. All right, good videos to have a look at. Why get a dash cam? Remember, if you do get a dash cam because you think that you're going to save yourself and you're going to prove that the other person is wrong, you are wrong. You are dumb, you are stupid, you are wrong, because my dash cam prove it. The dash cam is also watching you. Just think about that for 10 seconds. The dash cam is also watching you, not just the other person, okay? So, if you think that a dash cam is going to save your proverbial bacon and prove that you were wrong and the other person is right, in a courtroom, it is like a double-edged sword and it cuts both ways. All right, avoid distracted driving. Definitely have a look at that video. Things that you can do: increase following distance in front, using cruise control on highways, and eliminating distractions within your vehicle. Definitely have a look at those videos down in the description there. Traffic signs convey meaning in 3 ways, and if you can understand the classifications of traffic signs, this is going to help you to glean the information faster from the traffic signs. Okay, so the shape of the sign, the color of the sign, and the symbols or words thereon. Now, these are not all traffic signs. I will caution you that the school signs are not yet, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not consistent within the classification of school signs. For the most part, they are a pentagon shape, which is, you know, the house that you used to draw when you were in kindergarten, but they can be different colors in different states and different provinces, and they can have different colors and those types of things. So know that. I mean, some of them are blue, some of them are neon green now, and they've been other weird shapes and all kinds of things with school signs. So know that they're not consistent with their translation of information and their shape and colors and whatnot. Road sign classifications, regulatory signs. Regulatory, the root word of regulatory is regulation, which means it is the law and you must obey it. Speed signs, railway crossing signs in the States are regulatory signs. Brake checks for big trucks are regulatory signs. Yield signs are regulatory. Do not enter. These are all different examples of regulatory signs. School signs, as I said, they're not consistent within their classification. Cautionary signs tend to be diamond in shape, yellow background with black lettering or symbols thereon. Lane closed signs, and then object marker signs. And I forget, I think it was Status that was asking me about object marker signs. These are the rectangular, long rectangular signs. They have hash marks on them, and they are to mark fixed objects along the roadway. What is a fixed object? Fixed objects are things that you could potentially hit when you're driving. Concrete traffic islands, utility poles, bridge abutments, those types of things. Not standardized. Thank you, Corey. That's what I was looking for in terms of the language coming out of my mouth. Okay, okay, excellent. Object marker signs, these are probably the most prolific signs on our roadways because they warn you of things that you could strike and hit along the roadway. And the reason we put them up there is to move liability from the city, the region, the district, whoever is responsible for that roadway, onto the driver, because, oh, there was a sign there and you should have known what the sign meant, and therefore you should not have run into the tree, you should not have run into the bridge abutment, you should not have run into the traffic island or whatnot here. And the other piece of urban planning that I dislike immensely now, that some traffic engineer has thought was a great idea, was to stop people from parking up to the corner of the intersection. They've now have the curb, and then at the intersection you get this knuckle of concrete, this big kind of rounded area of concrete right at the edge of the intersection to prevent parking there, or prevent right-hand turns at the intersection, because apparently it's safer for pedestrians, and which I do not agree with at all. Personally, I think it just makes more concrete in our cities, and it's some traffic engineer's idea that somebody thought, oh, that's a great idea, and now everybody is putting them in, and we have them here in Vernon, where I'm like, why do we need that? It just reduces traffic flow through the intersection, and it does not increase pedestrian safety. So goofy things that we have, and they'll have an object marker sign up in front of that to warn traffic moving through that area. Okay, so these object marker signs mean pass left, pass right, or pass either left or right. And if you're driving a bigger vehicle, an SUV, like a Suburban, you're pulling a trailer, you're getting into a U-Haul or those types of things, these signs become incredibly important, because these are the things that you could hit and strike along the roadway. Okay, regulatory signs, as I said, the root word of regulatory is regulation, which means it's the law. Stop signs, railway crossing signs, brake check signs for big trucks, and stop signs. These are all examples of regulatory signs. Speed signs are also regulatory signs. Cautionary signs, height of overhead obstructions. If you rent a U-Haul truck, the numbers that you need to memorize are 13 feet 6 inches, 4.15 meters. That is the maximum height under which you can go with a vehicle. If your vehicle is taller than that, or it doesn't say 13 feet 6 inches, 4.15 meters, you cannot go under it. Some are relevant in terms of cautionary signs. Some will save your life, especially if you're driving a bigger vehicle, highway coaches and big trucks, and you're going down a hill. You need to know what incline signs are and how to read those. Others, not so much. If you live in a local area, they'll have cautionary signs warning you of a curve, and they'll have a sign underneath it indicating how fast you should go around that sign. Now, if you're new to the area and you don't really know how steep the curve is, then you definitely want to do the speed limit recommended on that sign. But if you've been there and you live there and you've been around the curve 100 times, you know how fast you can go around the curve to do that safely. Now, exit ramps off interstates and freeways will also have these cautionary signs. And as I said, if you haven't been off that interstate, that ramp before, you may want to take heed of that speed limit and then go around the curve, because it might be like a right-hand curve and super duper sharp, and you risk rolling over your vehicle when you're going around the off-ramp. Larger vehicles, destination signs, mile markers. I'll talk more about mile markers here in the next slide. Overhead signs, construction signs, okay? Years ago, when I was taking my school bus license in Ontario, as a requirement of getting your school bus license, you have to take a defensive driving course. This was one of my first encounters with power over driving instructors. It's crusty old, we're sitting in the classroom, we're waiting for the driving instructor, there's a few students there, defensive driving course, crusty old driving instructor comes in, picks up a bit of chalk, doesn't say hi to any of the students or introduce himself or whatnot, and he just writes on the board, name the 4 signs that warn of hazards and obstructions on the roadway. And as I've already talked about, he talked about the hazard obstruction signs. The 4th signs were the construction signs, and then he went on to pontificate, which means talk at length about the number of people that had driven into construction zones, into holes that had been dug in the roadway and those types of things, because people did not see the construction signs. So know and take note of construction signs to keep yourself safe when you're driving. And the other thing that a lot of drivers do is we were talking earlier about following traffic in construction signs. A lot of vehicles and a lot of cars and drivers will follow dump trucks and other commercial vehicles into construction zones, and they get in there, and then all of a sudden the truck stops and they're behind it, and the flaggers and construction workers are looking at the driver going, what are you doing? Because they just start following other traffic. They're not really driving, they're not paying attention to the traffic signs on the roadway, and they're just following the traffic, and they end up in a construction zone. And this is why some people get into traffic crashes. And I've talked about try and match the speed of the flow of traffic, and Marion asked me this question in a comment this week about traffic flow, keeping up with traffic flow, or whether you should do the posted speed limit. I'm an advocate of once you get your license, keep up with the traffic flow. Okay, go with the traffic flow because it makes you more predictable on the roadway and allows you not to have vehicles backed up behind you, and you're less likely to be tailgated and whatnot. Now, I cannot say that legally, and you definitely on a driver's test have to drive the posted speed limit. As I said, the issue of speed and the subject of speed in regards to defensive driving is a whole video in and of itself, and that's what I was thinking when Marion asked me that question, that I need to make a whole video on traffic flow versus posted speed limit, and we need to talk about that. And I will make a video about that, and we'll get that going. Right now, I'm in the process of hiring a new video editor as well, which is always a bit of a challenge in and of itself. So we'll talk more about that, and we can talk about that afterwards. Lane usage signs, again, these will tell you what you can do in the lane, whether it turns left or straight through, or whether you can turn left only. So pay attention to these. These are found overhead of the lanes as well. They work in concert with road markings on the road surface. Now, for those of us who get snow here in the winter time, the sanding, the salting, the plowing is going to it's going to remove the road markings on the roadway, and they paint all these new in the spring and whatnot. So look at the overhead signs, and these are usually square or slightly rectangle, white background with black lettering on them, and they tell you what you can do in the lanes that you're in, and look for the road marking signs in conjunction with those as well. And again, these are important when you're pulling a trailer, you're driving a bigger unit, and those types of things. Mile marker signs, these are incredibly helpful when you're on the interstate, when you're on the freeway, and will definitely help you with your route planning and your navigation. Figure out what exit you have to get off at. And in the United States, even number interstates run east-west, odd numbered interstates run north-south, and they all start numbering in the state. Now, if I'm correct on this, north-south usually will start at 0 at the north side of the state in which you're in. I know, for example, that Ohio starts in Toledo at mile marker 0 and goes to 213 in Cincinnati. As well, all the exit numbers line up with the mile markers. Now, again, New York State likes to be different, and the exit numbers do not line up with the mile markers. But for most places here in Canada and in the United States, the mile marker and the exit numbers are one and the same. So if you don't know where you're going and you're looking on Google Maps and you're doing your route planning, look for the exit number. That way it's better defensive driving, because say, for example, you're on Interstate 75, you're going through Ohio and you want to get off at exit 35. So you're coming from Michigan, you get into Ohio and it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and it goes up to 35. Once you get to exit 30, you know that you have 5 miles up the road that you're going to get off at exit 35. So it can really help you out and keep you safe. The other piece about it is you can keep your teenage children entertained while you're going on long road trips, because they're asking you how much longer, and you tell them, okay, we're going to exit 399 and you're at exit 250. Well, how far is it and how long is it going to take us? So you can help them with their math as well in terms of driving on the freeways, because there's not a lot else to do, so they might as well do some simple math in their head. Okay, these will keep you safe, and they're one of the best signs that you can use on interstates, freeways, highways, state roads, those types of things when you're driving long distances and on road trips and those types of things. All right, so good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer. Not necessarily the right answer. Hi there, everybody. A few people are here. Carrie is here. Eric is here. Hello, tuning in from Minnesota. They said they finally got some snow, a couple of inches there, and it is super cold. It is super cold here in the interior of British Columbia as well. It was minus 17 degrees Celsius this morning, which is what, like minus 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, it was super cold. And I can say with 2 thumbs up that the engine replacement I did in the buggy over Christmas, just before Christmas, it's starting fine. It's burning a lot of fuel, but it's starting just fine. And we're talking about traffic signs, and this is one of the things, one of the components of your driver's test that you must have in place. So this is why I encourage you to practice in and around the test center at the time of your test, to figure out where the traffic signs are. Just had a smart driver on the channel here, was from England, passed the driver's test on the second attempt. The reason they failed on the first attempt was playground signs. We have those here in British Columbia and other places where they put up signs outside of playgrounds, and they're tricky because it's a cautionary sign, diamond shape, yellow with a black letters and symbols on it. But underneath they put a little regulatory sign that says 30 kilometers an hour, which is in effect from sun up to sundown. And unfortunately, a number of drivers have failed because they didn't get the information that they needed when they were practicing, that there's a playground, and not only is there a playground, there is a reduced speed limit in and around the playgrounds. So these are some of the traffic signs that you need to pay attention to so that you can be successful on passing your driver's test. SN during driving test, if following a bus and the bus stops, what to do? Can I overtake? SN, yes, absolutely. You can overtake a transit bus. I actually had a driving instructor ask me that question the other day. They were from Edmonton, and you have to be proactive with the transit buses. And know the other piece of information about transit buses is that most of the time, 90% of the time, the bus stop is going to be on the downstream side of the intersection. So as you're approaching the intersection, the bus stop is going to be on the other side of the intersection, approximately 100 feet from the intersection, which is approximately 5-6 car lengths on the other side of the intersection. So if the bus is going to stop to alight or take on passengers, alight is a fancy word for people getting off the bus, getting off the train, alight passengers on the other side of the intersection, so know that. KB made a dumb mistake on Saturday night. I don't drink or smoke, but for some reason I drove into the wrong lane, incoming lane, and luckily no cars. How do I avoid this stupid mistake I did? KB, it's not just you. It's not just you, my friend. Some years ago over Christmas, Tracy and I were going to Calgary through the mountains in the wintertime on hardpack, and was beside a semi-truck on the Trans-Canada Highway, bombing along with the buggy, because the buggy is the best winter vehicle that I've ever driven. That's what I was trying to say. And passing the semi-truck, and all of a sudden there's a concrete barrier, and I didn't feel that there was enough room, as there was a slight curve we were on going to the right, and I looked up the concrete barrier, and I decided that I wasn't going to squeeze between the semi-truck and the concrete barrier, so I went on the left side of the concrete barrier, and we got about 200 feet down the road, and I said to Tracy, I think I'm on the wrong side of the road, and she said, yeah, I think you were. And like you, KB, fortunately, there wasn't anybody else around, wasn't any other traffic, and just put it in reverse, backed up, and then got going on the other side of the street again. So it's not just you, my friend. It does happen. Now, Corey will put up the video for you on night driving. Was it at night that you were doing this? It was in the dark. Now, don't beat yourself up for mistakes. Any mistake that you can walk away from and nothing happens, learn from it. That's how we learn to drive, unfortunately, through trial and error. Sometimes things work, sometimes we make mistakes. As long as you're learning from those mistakes, you're going to be a great driver because you're evaluating what you're doing and what's going on. So just do that, okay? So reflectors, traffic signs, intersections, street lights, those types of things, all these landmarks are going to help you to locate the road and figure out which side of the road you need to be on to keep yourself safe when you're driving at night. And yes, definitely have a look at that video on night driving. That will definitely help you out to drive on the right side of the road, because sometimes we get caught out. It just happens. And as I said, it wasn't just that time that I've done that as well. When I was in Australia, of course, we're driving on the other side of the road. I drove on the wrong side of the road a couple of times as well. So it does happen to us. And Corey's put up that video on driving at night. Blessed, how's your buggy doing? Still have my 2018 Honda Fit. Someone stole one of my hubcaps and not sure where to get another one. Blessed, you could look around. I don't know whether Hawaii has any auto wreckers or not, but you may be able to get one from there. But you can definitely get one online, a hubcap for sure. Retired, how are you, my friend? How are things in the Carolinas? Yes, and Corey's put that up for you. Blessed, the buggy, it's still alive. I had to put a new motor in it at 400,000 K because unfortunately the mechanic, the technician, the automotive technician who put the timing belt in wrong and burned a valve out of it. And I was not going to fix a valve on an engine that had 400,000 K on it. And so I put a new motor in it. And in the process of putting in a new motor, I got a new clutch, a bunch of front end parts. I got a new radiator and a bunch of other things. So by the time I got done, you know, I had pretty much about as brand new as I could get car, and it runs great. It runs great. It's as new as anything. It needs one more piece on the front end, but other than that, it's been really great. It still lives. The buggy lives. Retired. No snow in Raleigh. Just rain. We need the rain in North Carolina. Awesome. That is great. And yeah, you're definitely not getting winter anymore. It's us here in the north that's getting the winter for sure. Status: during a traffic fatality with a dump truck that struck and killed an 81-year-old senior, how do truck drivers look out for pedestrians? Status: those traffic crashes happen, and they're unfortunate, tremendously unfortunate. And I don't know the particulars or the details of the crash, but I have investigated a number of these, because this is the other work that I do, is I contract out as an expert witness and do expert witness testimony, and I've investigated a lot of these, and you know, they're terrible. They're terrible. People die, and it's not the first one, and it definitely won't be the last one. Carrie: practical driving on snow in a big parking lot. Did a good job doing the over braking and oversteering exercises, though how do you understeering exercise in snow covered parking lot? Carrie, how do you replicate understeering? So basically what you got to do on ice and snow and slippery conditions is get the vehicle going pretty fast, probably 20-30 miles an hour in a straight line, and then turn the steering wheel, and you'll find out that it'll continue to go straight. That's what understeering is. And essentially what you have to do is you have to turn less, so it's kind of a chop steering thing to bring it down. So you need to reduce your speed as well to regain steering, but understeering is basically when the vehicle continues to go straight and you've turned the steering wheel. The other way that you can do it is go in a straight line, turn the steering wheel, and hit the brake at the same time. Oftentimes braking and steering will cause the wheels to turn, and then it'll push straight forward, and you'll experience that understeering. But I'm glad that you did that and you got all that into play. I'm sure it was a lot of fun when you were doing it. Did you get, Carrie, did you get the ABS to engage on those slippery conditions when you were working in the parking lot there? RS, do you need to check our right blind spot and do a right shoulder check every single time we turn on a right corner? Yes, you need to signal, shoulder check your mirrors every time you change directions of the vehicle. So both turning right, turning left, and changing lanes. And Corey will put up that video for you on shoulder checking, the new video, and I give you an explanation of all of that. And that will definitely help you out with your shoulder checking to both pass the driver's test and to be a safer, smarter driver. Because as we know, not shoulder checking is to driving what not checking to see if a weapon is loaded is to gun safety. Why on any planet would you change directions of a 3,000-pound vehicle at speed and not check your blind areas? Now, the other piece about this, and this is that was a great question, because I have somebody on my channel right now who's left a comment saying that they drive an RV and they drove a truck and that they're, you know, super trucker. They drove 400,000 million miles, never had a crash, never banged into anything, you know, one of those super trucker people. And they said that in the comment that they can adjust their mirrors so that there are no blind areas on their car, there's no blind areas on their truck, there's no blind areas on their RVs, okay? And I like these people because it begins to get my driving, teaching skills working, because I need to think about this stuff, I need to respond to this stuff, or I need to decide whether I just don't want it on my channel. Because the other piece that upset me about this comment is that they're promoting their own channel, right? I take umbrage when people come on my channel and they start promoting their stuff, because I don't do that to other people. I don't dump my videos on other people's stuff. I will go on and leave comments, and if people want to come to my channel, that's a different thing, right? But when you're actually like, come to my channel and watch my videos, I get upset about that. That's what umbrage means. Anyway, the other thing about blind areas is that, like driving, they are dynamic. And what I mean by that is blind areas change around your vehicle in relation to the position of your vehicle on the roadway and where you're moving through the driving environment. So if you're turning left, for example, and you have a blind area here in this area, if you shift your vehicle at all, if your vehicle is this way, now your blind area has changed. Your blind area is now back here and up here because you can't see out here. So when people say that, they're saying, I've adjusted my mirrors so when my vehicle isn't moving, I don't have any blind areas. But when you're moving and the vehicle is changing direction, the vehicle is changing in space and place, you now have different blind areas, which requires and necessitates, for the purposes of safety, that you shoulder check. You will never convince me that you can adjust the mirrors and the cameras on your vehicle that you dismisses the need for you to shoulder check. So shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. Carrie, yes, definitely got the ABS to engage and got the back of the end of the car to swing out a bit during the oversteering exercises. Awesome. River, hello, my friend. I just recently shipped my car from Texas to Long Island, and this is my first time driving in the north. Do you have any tips for driving in icy conditions? I'm a new driver. River, yes, definitely. Corey will put up the video for you on driving on black ice, and that will definitely help you out, my friend, with driving there on long ice. Long ice. Yeah, that was a little Freudian slip there. Long ice. That's funny. Yeah, I drove in Long Island and they called it the Long Island. It's called the Long Island Parkway, but it was called, or the Long Island Expressway rather. And we often called it the Long Island Parkway because you usually parked on Long Island Expressway when you were driving there. So yes, Corey will put that video up for you and definitely help you out. Evan, there are signs telling you to watch for pedestrians before slip lanes on the back of metro buses. There is a sign telling you to yield to them and they swing wide like other large vehicles do. Yes, they do. Evan, there is a sign that is ignored, and I was doing that the other day because, as you know, I'm redoing my website. I'm putting up the practice driving test questions. I was redoing the sign questions, and the yield sign on the back of the transit buses, there's no, they're there, as you said, but it's not surprising that drivers and road users do not see the yield signs on the back of transit buses, because the transit bus I went by the other day was so overwhelming with advertising, and the yield sign is like this big on the back of the bus. It's literally 6 inches by 6 inches square, and it's, you know, completely eclipsed by all the other advertising on the back of the transit bus. And essentially what it means, the yield sign on the back of the transit bus, is that other traffic on the roadway has to give way to the transit bus if the speed limit is less than 40 miles an hour or 60 kilometers an hour. But most people don't know. And when I was teaching the defensive driving course to the company in Maryland, the drivers were like, oh, there's no yield sign on the back of the bus. What are you talking about? And we went out and started driving around, and I said, there's a transit bus, there's the yield sign. But of course, they're teeny tiny, and there's not a whole lot of public education about the yield signs on the back of transit buses. So thank you for reminding me about that. Status for advanced traffic light warning signs. How come all streets don't have them except highways? Status, it's cost. They cost money. And cities and towns need to recoup that cost somehow, and they're not going to put them in unless it is a high risk intersection. And you know, like here in British Columbia, we only have them on highways. We don't have them in cities, but we do have counters now, which make it a lot easier to try and determine if you're approaching a stale green at an intersection. Corey, my take on this, well, technically true that convex mirrors can show you everything. You have to look at the mirrors, whereas with a shoulder check only takes a glance for the same better result. And Corey, you couldn't be more right in terms of a shoulder check. New students, new drivers, those learning to drive and get their license take far too long because they're actually looking into the area and doing an intensive look. It's not an intensive look. It's a quick head turn, quick head turn, quick head turn. It's a quick head turn, and you're only looking because your peripheral vision is attracted to light and movement. And when you do a quick look into that blind area on your vehicle, you're looking for light and movement. And if you catch something, then you look again and you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's something there. I need to take evasive action. I need to slow down. I need to stop. I need to move over, or whatever response you need to take to prevent colliding with that person. But Trust me, shoulder checking, not just in a passenger vehicle, but when I drove coaches, shoulder checking and looking out through the front door. Semi-trucks, driving semi-trucks. In a semi-truck, on the passenger side, down at the bottom of the passenger's door is a window. A little window. It's about 6 inches wide and it's about 8 inches high. And the reason for that window at the bottom of the passenger door in the semi-truck is to check your blind area on that side of the truck, because you cannot see into it. And it's critical to keeping yourself safe when you're driving, to move your head when you're driving. And sometimes you even have to move your torso forward and back to keep yourself safe when you're driving. So when people tell me that, I don't subscribe to it. I don't even entertain it anymore, because I've been doing this a very long time and I've driven so many different vehicles that it's not possible. Corey, shoulder check is faster, easier, and better. Convex mirrors, a compromise for vehicles that cannot do a shoulder check. Yes, and Corey, absolutely. There are people who cannot do shoulder checks because of a physical disability or other limitation in their eyesight or head movement or those types of things. Those people, we generally get them to move from the hips as opposed to turning their neck if they have a neck injury. Or convex mirrors, yes, those will help and those will work. But as you said, I use convex mirrors. I use them in the big truck all the time. I like them when they're on trucks and cars and those types of things. Yes, they definitely help, but it does not negate or it does not dismiss the necessity for doing head checks and shoulder checks. All right, so we're kind of got away and into defensive driving and skills to keep yourself safe when you're driving, winter driving, and those types of things. We're talking about traffic signs tonight. As I said in the introduction, traffic signs are to driving what instructions are to an IKEA cabinet. And if none of you have put together an IKEA cabinet, gone to IKEA and bought some furniture and brought it home and tried to put it together, most of us just take it out of the box and we try to put it together. And only when things go wrong or we can't figure something out, then we grab the instructions and we start looking at them. And it's the same thing with driving. Most drivers, after getting their driver's license, do not look at road signs or read road signs. Most people follow other traffic. They keep up with traffic flow. They do turns and those types of things. So they just do what other traffic is doing, and they're not really paying attention to what the roadway is doing, and they're not looking at traffic signs. Now, I'm old school. I drove truck in the 1990s, before GPS, before phones and all those types of things. And that skill set that I had of reading maps, getting directions from people, and navigating to a place with a big truck, those skills are all gone. We don't need those skills anymore. They're just something that we've taken out of our brain and we put them on a shelf somewhere. So reading signs is part of that skill set, and I just see drivers, they're not looking at the road signs and not reading. But it's kind of like my favorite movie, Firefly, Serenity. The movie was called Serenity, where the Captain Reynolds says to the assassin, he says, if you want to find somebody, use your eyes, right? And you have to use your eyes when you're driving. You have to look at the traffic signs to keep yourself safe. That will definitely help you out, because the navigation can tell you all kinds of things, and navigations are great. They'll tell you what the speed sign is, they'll tell you what the signs are on the roadway, but they won't tell you all the cautionary signs or other signs. If you're looking for the local orchard and you're navigating there and there's a sign that points, oh, go this way to the orchard, and those types of things. Years ago, I was training a new driver, not very well, because this was before I became a driving instructor. But we were navigating to this place, and of course this was before GPS, and we got off on the exit where we were supposed to get off, and we didn't know whether to turn left or right when we got off the exit. And the driver's like, well, do we go left or do we go right? And the company that we were looking for, one of their trucks came out from the right side of the truck, and I was like, well, there's the company we're looking for, pointing to the truck with the big logo on the side of the truck. And I said, let's go that way and see what we find, right? So this is all part of the detective work of navigating when you don't have GPS and you don't have navigation apps on your phone. Status, too much hooligan drivers when not paying attention to lane usage signs, only then at the last minute. Those drivers make a very aggressive lane change, especially on a freeway to exit. Yes, they do, Status. And I was thinking about this today because I was writing down tips and strategies for a fleet that I'm working for and doing some contract work. And the best saying that I like about that one of the smart drivers gave me some years ago was that bad drivers never miss their exit. Good drivers sometimes miss their exit. So if you're not paying attention and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's my exit, go to the next exit and work your way back to where you're going. Now, saying that, most interstates, most freeways, you can, if you miss your exit, you can go down to the next exit, get off, drive over the overpass, get back on the road, come back up, and then get off at your exit that you want to do that. Now, I used to do that in the big truck all the time because, got lost because we didn't have GPS. We didn't have, map apps and those types of things. And so I was in New Jersey. And when you're in New Jersey around New York City, you can't do that. You can't go past your exit, go down to the next exit, and then get off, go over the overpass, and then come back and get on. And one day I got lost for like 2 hours trying to get back on the limited access highway, i.e. the interstate, because there's only certain places you can get on and off the interstate. Yes, so there were challenges with driving before GPS and using maps and those types of things. Corey, I would second that suggestion to take heed of the cautionary speed signs for many for exit ramps, especially in the winter. Yes, Corey, those speed signs, those cautionary speed signs for off ramps and other curves and corners, whatnot, they're under ideal conditions. So if you're in the winter time, slippery conditions, or it's raining or those types of things, you definitely want to get your speed down and try and, power the vehicle through the curve, corner, and turn for the best traction that you can get, right? Because you're going to get into trouble. And I have seen so many trucks, big trucks, they've been on the interstate for hours and hours and hours running along at 65, 70 miles an hour, and then they get off the off-ramp and they don't get their speed down to the recommended off-ramp speed, and they go around the corner and they flop over, like a shot pig. And it happens. And there's a lot of fail videos here on YouTube where that happens, that they've done that on an on-ramp, or an off-ramp rather. 3PO, hey Rick, I got what you're saying about dash cams being double-edged swords, but do you think the positive outweighs the negative, or is it not worth it for the everyday driver? 3PO, I think the sale of dash cams is based on fear of what might happen. Because, and here's why I tell you that. A lot of the cases that I work in terms of being an expert witness are transit buses. Now, as part of the mandate, whatever the policy is of the transit corporation, whether it's part of the union requirement or whatnot, transit buses have minimum 2 cameras in them. Most of the time, the transit buses have 5 cameras in them. Okay? One at the back door, one at the back of the bus. Inside the bus, they have one outside the front of the bus. They have one at the front door. And generally, there's one at the front showing the whole bus. Those cameras are usually what builds my case against the transit bus driver, or whatever happened in traffic. So when you're asking me about everyday drivers, you don't need one. You don't need one. And the other thing about this is that, you've probably seen all of the, the Hollywood films about England, London, England. It's the most surveyed country, the most surveyed city in the world, that you pretty much can't go anywhere in London without being on camera. We are fast approaching that here in North America, where you can't go too many places without being on camera. Whether you're on somebody's cell phone, you're on a security camera, you're on a doorbell camera, somebody's got a dash cam or whatnot. So even if you don't have a dash cam in your car, there is a high probability that something else, some other camera somewhere, is going to capture the crash on video. Okay, street cameras. What am I talking about? Live video cameras and those types of things. Road cameras. I'm losing I can't think of the word. But you know, toll booths and those types of things all have cameras. I worked on a crash was it in West Virginia? It was in the States. I think it was in West Virginia. And it was a workplace crash with a concrete truck and a concrete pumper trailer. And one of the workers was killed when the brakes failed on the truck. They had video of it, and they had sound recording of it as well. And where they got it from was the doorbell cameras of two of the houses within close proximity to where the work was being done. So it's not just dash cams, it's also all the other cameras out there in which, you know, the surveillance world in which we now live. And, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, which is interesting because the baby boomer generation, my mom's generation, my kid's grandmother, was the first generation that grew up with the motor car. Okay, so they spent their whole lives having the car. My kids are the first generation to grow up on video, on film, okay, under constant surveillance, always having a camera ready and always having pictures and video and those types of things. So interesting in terms of those two generations. One was the first to grow up with the motor car. The next one is to grow up with smartphones and cameras and video and those types of things. Mary, you know those concrete bubbles so as to stop people going around people that are waiting to turn? Mary, no, those concrete bubbles at the intersection are to prevent cars from parking up to the corner at the intersection so there wouldn't be cars parked here. And the second thing is they believe that it's kind of like a gangway coming down from a boat. And now just bear with me because I just came up with this analogy right off the top of my head. It's like a gangway so that the pedestrians can go out on this gangway and have this safe little island that they can look. Oh, look, there's no cars coming, Mommy. We can go now. And so that's what it's a little refuge for pedestrians to look and check and make sure the traffic. Look, Mommy, we're okay. We can cross the street now. There's no big, bad, evil cars because we hate cars. They're so terrible and awful. And all the engineers should just create bombs that get rid of all these awful things in our world because they're so bad. That's the engineering world in which we now live. We hate cars. We hate cars. But it was interesting, if you go on my community tab, I actually asked the question on the weekend of what is your preferred method of transportation? 3% was cycling, but we're ripping up the roads and we're narrowing the roads for cars and we're putting in all these bicycle lanes. But only 3% of the North American, I suspect most people were North American, of the North American population are actually riding bicycles as a choice of transportation. 75% of people are still riding cars. So, you know, I go on X, the social media platform, previously known as Twitter, and we hate cars, build more bicycle lanes. And, you know, I was talking to my friend who lives in Montreal, and they've done the same thing. They've torn up the main roads and they put in all these bicycle lanes. It's like, what percentage of the population is actually riding bicycles? 1%, 2%? It's the same thing as this whole woke movement. The tail is wagging the dog. The tail is wagging the dog. And, you know, I just hope that, you know, I would love to think that we in North America could, you know, we could have better public transportation. We could have people that would cycle and people that would walk and those types of things. But the thing is that we live in low density population. We live in like 2 people per square mile, as opposed to Japan or Europe or China, where they have like 2,000 people per square mile. When you have 2,000 people per square mile, you can build elaborate transit systems that serve the public, and people choose to take the public transportation system and not drive. To think that we can do that in North America is absolutely ludicrous and completely denying any truth of the matter at all. So the traffic engineering people that are on X, you know, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, they need to look at the reality of the situation. And you cannot base the planning, urban planning, on what's going on in Europe or what's going on in China and other places in the world, because it just doesn't work in low density population, because The tax base simply does not support it. Okay, 3PO, we got Unfiltered Rick right now. There we go. Excellent. Yes, I had a little bit of a rant. I don't know where the soapbox came from there. I got going on a little rant about we hate cities and why things won't work. All right, Radical. Metro City is, I feel public transport and cycling has a lot more established support and may even be better. In small towns, cars are super ideal. Yes, Radical, you're absolutely right. I mean, here where I live, in a small town in the interior of British Columbia, I mean, you know, public transit it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have these little buses running around and I look in them and there's like 0 people, 1 person, maybe 2 people, you know, and people are just not. And it's hilly here. We live in the mountains. People do not ride bicycles when it's hilly. Rathana, thank you so much for that. Carrie, bicycles do not have enough driving range to make them practical as a main form of transportation. No. And the other piece about it is that people don't like riding them in the rain. And the other piece, you know, I consider myself an expert cyclist. I'm a professional cyclist. I have done bicycle tours around the world. I've cycled through Scotland. I've cycled around Tasmania, Europe, Scotland, Canada, and when I ride my bicycle to work, it was my main form of transportation when I lived in Melbourne, but when I went to the university, there was a place I could have a shower. I wanted a shower because I'm all sweaty when I get there. So this is the other piece. And when I rode my bike in Victoria, you know, because you could ride your bike most of the year, and I had a shower at work. I could go to work, I could have a shower, and I could dress clothes, nice clothes. I had a locker at school, at work, and those types of things. That's what you need. So Radical, the buses, yes, the buses are not great here. And I will tell you a story about transit. I rode public transit going to university when I was at Western in London, Ontario, Canada. And, you know, again, it was before computers. It was before Google. I mean, oh my God, riding public transit now is just like manna from heaven. It's just the greatest thing ever. You go on Google, you type in where you want to go, when you want to go there. Hit the bus icon. It tells you the exact route, what the number of the bus stop is. Oh my God, it's like the amount of information is just fantastic. No wonder why Google is like an international world leading monopolized company, you know, and, you know, we had all these flyers with the bus schedules on them when I lived in London, Ontario. And, you know, to go from one place to go to the train station, oh my God, it was like, you know, it was a trek to Bali or something. And, you know, I would always leave an hour or 2 hours to get to where I wanted to go when I had to take the transit. I moved to Ottawa, which is our federal capital in Canada. And I learned later that the public transportation system in Ottawa has its own roads. They have roads just for transit buses. And this is what I say to people. If you want to build, you want a city that's bicycle friendly, make roads that are just for bicycles. I mean, I know they're called bike paths and those types of things, but no, take some of the roads and make them into roads for just pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And I'm thinking that maybe just bicycle traffic. Anyway, moving to Ottawa, didn't know anything about the transit system. Had only been there a couple of weeks. I was going back to London to catch the train on a Sunday. Sunday, for anybody who knows anything about transit or has ridden transit, knows that Sunday is the absolute worst day to take transit because the buses run once every 2 weeks on a Sunday. And I knew this. So I planned 2 hours to get to the train station. I get down to the bus stop, I get on the bus, and I'm at the train station within 20 minutes. I have an hour and a half to wait for the train. Because the transit system in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, is absolutely magic. And it was the same thing when I lived in Melbourne, Australia. The transit system in Melbourne, Australia was absolutely magic. I never looked at a bus schedule or a transit schedule when I was in Melbourne unless I was taking light rail. To get on the tram, I just went down and got on a tram because we lived on one of the main lines, and a tram went by every 8 minutes. So you were never waiting for a tram for more than 4 or 5 minutes. So it was absolutely magic, and I love living in big cities that have incredible transit systems. Marion, then you watch the ire of Vancouverites if you close roads for bikes. Yeah, that would be fun, Marion. But, you know, that's where we're at right now. Urban planning is we hate cars. We hate cars. We're going to build bike lanes, and we're going to shut down streets for vulnerable road users. Epic. One more thing, if you were riding a motorcycle, are there specific highway signs for you in North America? Because in other parts of the world, they would have horsepower restrictions. Yes, they do, Epic, and part of the graduated licensing program for many states and many provinces also have limitations on motorcycles. And motorcycles are the one part of my driver training that I would have to look up any of that information. And the other piece about that, Epic, if you go to Europe, you're driving in Europe or you're driving in California, lane splitting is allowed. And that's when you come up to the intersection, the traffic is stopped. The motorcycle is allowed to move up between the lines of traffic and get to the front of the line of traffic and then take off first from the light. So know that. I'm a huge advocate of lane splitting because I think that it makes, in my professional opinion, I believe that lane splitting allows motorcycles to be more visible to overall traffic when they're driving. So I'm a huge advocate of that. So we can definitely talk more about that. See you next time. High five. And to you as well, my friend, Eric. Love your wisdom. Thanks to you. And Corey, missed you kiddos and puppies in the video. Yes, puppy time. Oh, excellent. Okay, awesome. And if you have any questions, anything else we can answer, look down in the description there. Just a minute, I'll go get them. Carrie, you are most welcome, my friend. Blessed. I'm happy that you're still continuing with your videos and live streams. Keep up, very much appreciated. Have a blessed week, Rick, and everyone stay safe. Thank you so much, Blessed. And yes, 10 years. It's been 10 years on YouTube, Blessed. Thank you for dropping by. It's always a pleasure. What's going on? Were you having a nap and I woke you up? It's not comfy, eh? You're on your bum. Yes. There you go. Is that better? Yes. Say hi to all your fans. There you go. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. All the best. And as I said, if you have any questions at all, leave a comment down in the comment section there. We'll definitely help you out. I try to look at the comments and answer questions every day, and definitely gives me ideas for more education videos. So all the best. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.